Protecting saints, to the earth spirit of this place, to the temple protecting spirits, while we pray for it, flourishing of the true Dharma, peace in the land, harmony among nations, tranquility within the Sangha, wisdom and prosperity for countless supporters, continued turning of the two wheels. May we with all beings realize the Buddha way. Buddha.
Zazen. Dharma gives me access to the kingdom.
start with names. I'm Hojo. Josiah. Horaku. Dauren. Susan. Jokuin. Genki. Joshin. Ren. Francis. Tojun. Emmanuel. Genpo. Christian. Kogan. Anyu. Anshin. Mandy. Jiko. Kose. Roses. David. Chris. Genjo. Kyle. Iso. Jokai. Sokai. Delilah. Sandy. Colin. Nancy. Natalie. Zach. Ise. June. Paul. Emily. Sagan. Myoan. Shinyu. Christopher. Emma. Colleen. Carl. Chokai. Terry. Barbara. Dawn. Mario. Oriana. Paul. Molly. Jisho. Ernest. Isa. Ray. Shuho. Gempo. Leah. Natalie. Luke. Lewis. Seo. Anshin. Tommy. Chris. Hannah. Karuna. Benjamin. Good morning. Thank you for sharing your names. Help us feel like one body of an assembly. Oh, I tweaked my back a little bit this morning. Now, those of you who know me more, you may have thought, oh, he's moving funny. Did anyone think that? It's not too bad. But you know, these bodies. So I'm going to continue this morning talking about the first few chapters of the Diamond Sutra, which I've taken up as a theme for this end of this year. And Diamond Sutra is, again, one of the core sutras of Mahayana Buddhism, particularly important to the Zen school, which this temple is belongs to, the Soto Zen school of Buddhism, a lineage through Japan. Actually, the Diamond Sutra became kind of the central sutra of our tradition for a period of time. So really deeply influential to the Zen tradition. And it's a part of a collection of sutras called the Prajnaparamita, or the Perfections of Wisdom Sutras. And so there's many Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. They're really great in all kinds of ways, but one of the ways that makes them great is they're scale invariant. That's a technical term I learned from one of our old friends, Gohaku. And scale invariant means that it's at every scale, it presents the same thing. So if you look very tiny, all the way up to very big. So the longest Prajnaparamita Sutra is the Prajnaparamita in 100,000 lines. It fills 600 volumes. And the shortest is called the Prajnaparamita in one syllable. The syllable is A. And all of the Prajnaparamita is said to be there in that one syllable. So it has this kind of quality. I don't know if it's accordion, Zydeco Dharma. So the Diamond Sutra is on the smaller end, or shorter end. It's known as the Prajnaparamita in 300 lines. And so it's fairly easy to read. Many of you have read it many times. If you're new to practice here, I highly recommend encountering it. On the website, where there's a listing about these talks. There's a few different translations that are listed. Those are just ones that I use. There's other ones I use. There's not the one that I would say, this is the one you should study. They'll have their ups and downs. So I encourage you to read that. Particularly the first 5 chapters, just takes maybe 5 minutes to read. First 5 sections, we could say. They're very short. And it is this very powerful teaching of the Mahayana way. In it, the first section is just a simple description of the Buddha's life, and you get a kind of image of the Buddha there in his very simple life as a renunciate, living in a garden just outside the city with his followers that are also renunciates. Not that those are the only people who follow the Buddha, but those are the people who are staying there in the garden, and that they travel into the city and receive alms rounds, return to where they're staying, they eat, and then the Buddha washes his bowl, puts away his robe, and then sits upright. It's very simple. And then Subhuti, one of his closest disciples, comes forward. Subhuti, known as the disciple in the foremost of kindness, and he asks the Buddha, he says, for those of us who have given rise to this thought of awakening, those of us who believe, who are trusting in that we could live a life that is not just within the structures of delusion, where should we abide? What should we invest in? Where should we find our place? What should we take as the way? There's all kind of ways we can understand that part of the question. And then he says, and how should we control our minds or our hearts? How should we subdue them? And so then in chapter 3, in chapter 4, in chapter 3, the Buddha gives this teaching about subduing the heart or subduing the mind. Right? Not crushing it. I was saying in the past couple talks that there's 2 characters in the Chinese that are used there, but one of them I think gives a really direct image. It's a person and a dog. Now, I've noticed, I'm not sure if people train dogs or dogs train people. I think it's kind of both directions, and it should be a balance. It's actually good that it's that way, right? If the humans were just training the dogs, that would just be brutality, right? So, but actually there's this meeting that happens. And so this is the same kind of image we can have with our mind or with our heart. Is that it's not that our mind is just to be subdued in the sense that if we could just put it down, then it would we would be in good shape. Actually, we'd be in horrible shape. We need our mind. We need our heart to be active. But if we just don't go through the process of disciplining and finding the way in which there's a really clear, free way forward, we tend to get caught in all of these troubles. Right? So the Buddha does this very interesting thing. He doesn't give him a technique. You might think, if you read this, you'll think that's what the Buddha's going to do. Subhuti says, how should we control our minds and where should we abide? And we figure the Buddha will say, sit quietly and upright. Breathe in, breathe out. There could be an app for this, right? There are apps for this. So, but that's not what he does. He gives them this instruction on how it is that he should regard things. He says something like, enshrine in your heart the deep conviction that all beings, beyond any edge of what you could consider being a being, and there's this long list, whether born of an egg or born of a womb or born of the wetness, whether they have consciousness or don't have consciousness, or neither don't have consciousness or do not have consciousness. Like, that's the extent to which he's going to say it should be every possible being that has ever been or would ever be, that all of them are awakened. We could also change the language a little bit, that all of them are the path of awakening. They're all involved, and they're all right here in whatever awakening is present. All of those beings are present. That is what should be enshrined in your heart. But then when you do that, actually, there won't be any beings. So it's a kind of conundrum, or a kind of, sounds like he's saying an opposite thing. But if we listen with a kind of just simplicity of hearing the words and let it roll into it, it will start to show you something. That the everythingness and the total freedom or unobstructedness are not the different thing. So this is an instruction about subduing, not a breath technique. Although breath techniques are good, they can be good, but he's saying this is how you should orient yourself. And now your mind will not be this huge problem for you in the way that you think it is. It might be a huge problem for you in a different way, which is the bodhisattva way, right? In which whatever it is that you're encountering is a step on the path, as opposed to something that if you could get over it or around it or through it, then you would be free. It becomes the opportunity for the practice. And then in chapter 4, and he's responding to dwelling, where should you dwell? The Buddha says, dwell nowhere. Don't invest in any object, in any sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, or thought, or feeling, or idea, that you don't want to make your home in any of those places, that you shouldn't abide someplace. Instead, do this practice of generosity. He says, live through generosity. But as you're living through generosity, don't get fixed on some idea of the giver, what's being given, who's receiving it, in any of the feelings or forms that come about in that practice. They're there, but don't make them the home. Don't say, oh, this is what giving is really about, and then live there and say, okay, now I know what giving is about. You notice when you really understand something, oftentimes you just stop doing it, right? It's that understanding becomes where you live as opposed to the activity of it. So many truths about life and practice and overcoming suffering are not that complicated. Like be generous. It's not that complicated, right? But once we thought we understand what generosity is, now generosity becomes very complicated. So this is a kind of conundrum. But this is how the Buddha regards. And he says, if you practice this way, there will be merit. There will be merit that is immeasurable. Merit is the body of a Buddha. That's where a Buddha emerges from. That's where the body of awakening, that's where the path of awakening emerges. And we practice in this way. We call that merit. Merit's ungraspable. Here he's saying it's immeasurable. And oftentimes we want to look for the results. We want to say, well, I did this kind of generosity, so I can feel better. You will. But then you live in the feeling of the result, and then the merit becomes measurable. Not nothing. It just becomes measurable. So it does good, but then it has limitations. So the Buddha is saying, if you really what you want is this immeasurable body, the measurable body of the Buddha, those of you who have studied Buddhist philosophy or teachings a bit more, you will remember that there's 3 bodies of the Buddha, the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya. So here he's referencing the Dharmakaya, the Dharma body, the ungraspable body of the Buddha. But that's not to deny the Sambhogakaya or the Nirmanakaya Buddha. There's actually no such thing as a Nirmanakaya or Sambhogakaya Buddha without a Dharmakaya Buddha. Neither is there a Dharmakaya Buddha without a Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya Buddha. What I'm saying makes no sense. But if you're studying that stuff, it's important to know. So, this is the first part of the teaching. And then we arrive to the fifth chapter. Oh, at the end of the 4th, then the Buddha says, in this teaching is what you should abide, or in this Dharma. Dharma isn't only a teaching, Dharma is the truth. Right? So we say Dharma, if the Buddha preaches the Dharma, we can say that's a Buddhist teaching, but a Buddhist teaching is always the truth. So, or the law, sometimes people translate it as the law. If you want to mess with your monotheistic roots in your head a little bit, use that a bit. It's good. I encourage you to mess with those roots. So, chapter 5. This is my translation. I don't quite like the other translations that I was seeing this morning. So the title of this section is called True Seeing of the Principle of Suchness. And the Buddha says, Subhuti, what do you think? Can the Tathagata, that's another word for the Buddha, Tathagata means the thus come one, can the Tathagata be seen by bodily marks or not? No, world-honored one. Attaining the sight of the Tathagata is not possible by means of bodily marks. And why not? The Tathagata in places has explained that bodily marks are exactly not bodily marks. The Buddha said to Subhuti, the place of illusion has marks. All are hollow. The place of illusion has marks. All are hollow delusion. If one sees the myriad marks and the no marks, this is exactly seeing the Tathagata. So that's probably confusing. It is confusing, so I will talk a little bit about it. But before I talk about what is said here, I want to just point out that the Buddha here is now going beyond Subhuti's question, and he's taking them to a very central pivot point. And maybe we can understand this pivot point as like, okay, Buddha, then what does it look like? What am I supposed to do? You know, I can see you. I'm here, living with you, practicing together with you, and able to ask questions, and able to see there's a way forward. And now you're giving me this instruction, and I just want to ask, what does it look like? And it turns out that the early Buddhists, they really took this question seriously, and they thought about, well, what does it look like? What would the form of Buddhahood be? And there's a lot that flowed out from that investigation. But here I want to focus on, why is that an important question? This, what does it look like? Especially here, because we're talking about what does it look like to dwell in something which is not about abiding in what things look like. So that's what he's saying. Don't abide in what things look like. Don't abide in the marks or the shape or the form of things. But still we have this question, well then what am I supposed to do if I don't know what it looks like? How am I supposed to act? And there's one level of that question which is just the level of the question of like, well, if I could see it, I could try to do it. I could mimic it. And that's good. We should be able to do that. But you also have to consider, what happens when we see something that we feel like mimicking, that we're inspired to emulate? What's happening at the center of your being from which you're seeing? It's not just that you're this inert mass over here that happens to be seeing something and you're going to try to pound yourself into that shape over there, although that's the way we may experience it in our conscious mind sometimes. But actually seeing the awakening requires awakening here in the seeing. So we're profoundly transformed by the image of things, by the image of awakening. So this is a question of not just about, okay, could you give me the model so I could try to carry it out? It's like, how do I regard this whole path, this whole project of living and awakening and overcoming of suffering? Now, deluded beings, welcome to the club. We make this fundamental mistake continually. And we cling to an objectified image. Oftentimes in the language of Buddhism, you will hear clinging to an object. Right? And it's very easy for us to just stop at thinking about that as like objects, without considering, how does this become an object? It's not in itself just an object. It takes my subjective objectification of this object for it to become an object. It's a living expression of the body of all beings. It's totally alive. And yet the way that I regard it very quickly reduces it to an object. You following me there? Mm-hmm. See? So the way that we're looking, from where we're looking, has everything to do with why things are objects, not just that they exist out here and I am passively receiving the impression of the object. So oftentimes we'll say cling to the object, and we think that it's like, well, there's a me and there's an object and I'm clinging to it. What I should do is let go of it, get rid of the object, and then I'll be free because there won't be anything. Right? There won't be anything to hinder me because I won't be holding on anywhere. But this isn't quite what the Mahayana is teaching. The Mahayana is saying not to simply release the grasp on an object that exists out there. It's saying that what we want to do is we want to take the energy from behind the clinging to an objectified image. We have an image that we then are clinging with, and that's how the thing becomes an object. Right? Now, it's true of these, but it's true of people too, right? You know, we're meeting people all the time. Maybe you're somewhere, maybe you're out for dinner. I heard someone say a few months ago, I can't remember the context, they were talking about like testing suitors for their children. And they were like, watch what they do if you go out to dinner. How do they interact with the person who comes to take your order? And I remembered when I was back a young guy courting my wife, and we had been dating for some time, a couple of years, and we went out to dinner with her little brother's, at that time, girlfriend. And we got done with the meal. She was lovely. It was so fun. And we had a good time. We got done. And also his mom was like, nope. My wife's mom was like, nope, no good. And I was thinking, okay, she's invited me out to dinner more than once, so I must be doing something okay. But I tried to understand what it was. And it was just that, the way that she had reacted to the other people. And then after the dinner, she didn't say this very important phrase. If you're ever in Japan and someone treats you, you have to say, "Gochisousama deshita." It's like thanking them for the meal. She didn't say that. And I felt so sorry for her because she's young. I'm sure she was just nervous, and that she knows how to say that, and she would say it, but she didn't. So, it was kind of the acts. But anyway, the point being here is you can see that, and you can see that in yourself. It's a really good thing to study. You don't have to come to the temple to study Buddhism. Just like when you're buying some potato salad at the grocery store, and someone's scooping it for you. What are they? Are they a machine that's just responding to your demand? Not so great. Not so great. They're alive. But we quickly regard them not as a being, but as an object. So go back to to section 3 here. All beings should be liberated. So I was bringing up last week a little bit about, by the way, this chapter 5 probably we'll talk about for 4, 5, or 7 months. Maybe not that long, but this is a big one. Last week I was bringing up this image of the bird, and I was saying, the bird in the sky, bird flying in the sky. Maybe where we should start with that image is what deluded beings' one of our big continual mistakes is in seeing the bird we forget the sky. We think that we just think is the bird. And that's very natural for us. We see the bird, it's a bird. And then the sky disappears. Right? Or yesterday I was up in the woods and we saw one of those big, beautiful woodpeckers. The kind that's not, it's like tick, 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 tick. The one's like doom, 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 doom. And we found it on a tree there. But once you see that crimson red of the bird's head, the forest disappears. Right? In one way. But we could also say the whole forest is there in the crimson red, but we'll get to that in a minute. So this is why these questions of marks, or these questions of characteristics, or attributes, or notions, or forms, or images, these are all words for the same thing. It's one character in Chinese, but all kinds of different ways that people translate that. Okay? And I do it as well, because in the English language, there's not something that just fits there. I'd say if I'm just using something and trying to be consistent, I'll use the term marks. But it's kind of a clunky word. But the idea is that when we go through this process of cognizing something, that it has that whatever we're cognizing has a series of attributes or marks, characteristics, which our consciousness uses to form the object, our experience of the object. Right? So that's the analysis, the Buddhist analysis. And so what are those different shapes that appear to us so that we can experience them? That's why in Buddhism, that which just seems like a really philosophical or psychological exploration, the reason it's important to explore it is because it hooks into this fundamental type of problematic way that we treat things. We take the primary quality of those marks and we think of it as reality. And so that's why the Buddha says, don't live in the marks, don't abide in the marks, don't invest in the marks. They're there, hallelujah. But don't make that what's real, right? Don't make that the be-all and end-all of everything. That's where you get stuck. Notice in this section too, he asks, can the Tathagata be seen by bodily marks? Now, a lot of translations will say physical marks, and I think this is a mistake. Because our bodies are not just physical. They're anything which is held together is a body. So whether that's emotional, physical, energetic, conceptual, those are all one way we can understand all of those different things are bodies. But it's easier to just think of the physicality of the body. The reason I bring this up is not to make it too philosophical, but because a lot of interpretations of the Diamond Sutra end with this very tragic conclusion that if we could just get over physicality, everything would be great. And this touches a real nerve that most of us have. It's called the escape into oblivion nerve. And it's as old as humanity, right? To just go to the formless. If I could just go to the formless, all problems would be solved. That's true. But there wouldn't be anything. And that's not what Buddhism is teaching. Buddhism isn't saying that we should just get rid of everything. It has another thing, which we'll talk about here. Right? So how is this way of Buddha embodied? That also is what this chapter is talking about. What is the significance of the embodiment of the Buddha if it can't be located in these marks? Because that's the way that our usual mechanism of thinking about embodiment is, well, it should look like this. You know, in the old descriptions, there's 32 marks of a Buddha. Right? A golden body, 16 feet tall, extra kind of lump of flesh on the top of his head here. You just thought that was a bun. No, that's actually there's an extra flesh, long, big earlobes, many things. Okay, which you'll see in the iconography of a Buddha. Very important, but that's how we tend to only think of the body. But remember, we're talking about a living body. We're talking about immeasurable merit, a body that is about immeasurable merit, not just this thing which is locatable. So, a typical reading of the text of this chapter goes something like this. Form or image is delusion. And he says that, right? The Buddha says, the place of illusion has marks. All are hollow delusion. So the Buddha is saying that really clearly. So the typical interpretation would be, because all of those marks, all those characteristics, forms, all the things we grab onto to try to form an image are delusion. So our job is to see all images, all forms, everything we encounter as no image. To go beyond them. And in going beyond them, that's what makes the bird free in the sky. That's what makes us free. If we could just see that whatever it is that we're experiencing, it's actually, the form that we're experiencing is actually not form. Just go beyond it, and then there won't be any problem. Abide in the boundless. Abide in the immeasurable body of merit. So, this is the typical interpretation. Some of you might catch on that there's some problems with this. The first one is that it really tickles that nerve I was talking about, the escapist nerve. Right? if you get excited about that, probably part of you is excited about what I was just saying. Ooh, yeah, that sounds good. Right? Sounds good. And that's right, it should. There's a part of us that yearns for that. And it seems like really the best kind of solution. But that kind of escapist interpretation means that we're just trying to run off into the sky. There's the real danger that we objectify the image of the empty sky. So in the same way we objectify objects, like what we would consider an object, something that has solidity, and we say, oh, there's a stick, a teaching stick, or this is kind of a weird thing for a lot of people, so if we just a glass, we're more used to that, then we produce that experience of a glass by holding on to the characteristics. And we could talk all day about how this is an emergent phenomena of experience for you, and really if I asked you, do you think I'm going to let it go, you will feel nervous, right? And you should, because there is something here, right? I'm not saying there's nothing here. I'm just saying that it's coming together. You're involved in its coming together. So when we cue into that, we can see the aliveness of the glass. But think what happens when we're looking at the sky and we make it into an object. We make it into the idea of emptiness, the idea of no obstacles. That's the danger of this typical reading of this sutra, where we say if we could just see things as no things, as if no things was a thing that you could conceive of. So it puts our mind in the wrong place. And then if we do this, I will say the bird will fall to the ground immediately. There's no freedom in that. The bird, nothing lifts there, nothing's underneath the wings. So we have to be really careful with the Prajnaparamita teachings. They're so important and so powerful. It's one of the reasons that we always balance them with compassion teachings. Because the wisdom teachings, you can get this very sharp sword, and then you can start cutting through things, and you can make a big mistake, right? Because you start objectifying things in a way that you didn't realize that you were. So that's a good reason for there to be pain. Like if we're thinking about why do we have to suffer? We have to suffer because there's this other side, which is compassion. And the cultivation of compassion is necessary for really understanding what the Buddha's teachings is, not just to dismiss the inconvenience of things. So, why ask this question? What is the embodiment of the Buddha? We ask this question because we should also really want to know, what is the bird? What is the bird? What is that red crimson head on the tree where everything disappears? You see it, and you know something's true. And at some points, the whole world might flip inside out. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about seeing the Buddha. That the particularity of that momentary experience and the total freedom of being are inseparable. It's just the opposite of the part of us that wants to dismiss the individual things to get to the spiritual. Now, the founder of our school in Japan, Dogen Zenji, he had a very unique reading of this chapter, and he states very clearly in one of his writings called Seeing Buddha, which is part of the Shobo Genzo, for those of you who studied that. It's his collection of works, Kenbutsu. He translates this last line of chapter 5 in a unique way. The line that says, if one sees the myriad marks, most interpretations would be as no marks. This is exactly seeing the Tathagata. Almost all commentators read it this way. So I'll say it again. If one sees the myriad marks, as no marks, this is exactly seeing the Tathagata. This is the typical reading. So if we broke that down, if one sees all the characteristics of everything we meet as not really being characteristics, they're just mirages, then that would be what it means to see the Buddha's body. But Dogen says it shouldn't be an as, it should be an and. So he says if one sees the myriad marks and the no marks, this is exactly seeing the Tathagata. Now, this is, like, you may feel like, yeah, that kind of makes sense, or that solves some. This is like a pit. The farther you follow it, the more empty space there will be. I mean, a pit in a good way. So I would encourage you to just heave yourself into the pit and see what happens. It's really the opposite of the kind of pit of nihilism. Right? It's the pit of the body of the Buddha is real. But it's not real in the objectified way that we're normally perceiving things. So we have to see the forms, we have to see the attributes, we have to care for them. They're as real as the no attributes. Right? They're as real as the no marks, they're as real as the no form. And it's in the seeing both the form and the no form that the Tathagata's body is revealed. Another way we could say this is that the form and the no form are inseparable. This is why the bird is free in the sky. This is why the fish is free in the water. This is why we are free in delusion, which is a tricky thing to say. But actually, our delusion is our freedom. Our delusion is our opportunity to also see the non-delusion. And practice comes alive right there in that intimate heart. So I realize this is all a bit like this, kind of. It's supposed to. And as you ingest it more, and it's one of those things where it's not just something that can be thought through, now I got the concept. It's the thing that as you pay more attention to it, your way of seeing gets oriented through this kind of way of teaching. And then at points you'll go, oh, that's not so complicated. That makes sense. But then if someone asks you and you try to say it, you'll say something sounds complicated, or saying something that sounds kind of like contradictory in some way. So I just want to encourage you that way. That's why Zen is, famous for being so kind of like people saying things that don't make sense. Try to make something make sense, but making sense has its own problems. So. We have a little time for questions.
Do you have advice for when this teaching needs to maybe, like the nihilism you were talking about, or like more focus on the no marks than the marks, and how do we learn to care for the
marks? Yeah, that's a very good question. I would say really central in this school, the meditation that we do, the Zazen. Don't regard Zazen as a way to kind of get rid of things. Oftentimes that's the way that we come to meditation practice. We think like, oh, my mind is so scattered, or I have this, I have some wound or some difficulty, and if I could practice a meditation and kind of forget about it, we might not be exactly using those words, but that's kind of what we're hoping for, that it'll sort of go away. That rather than regarding the practice that way, regarding it as really meeting the marks, meeting the characteristics, meeting the difficulty, meeting our embodiment, physical, emotional, energetic, conceptual, all those different levels of our being, and think about it as a caring as opposed to an objectifying, and objectifying as a problem. And that's one thing that I think that we do really well at this temple, is we come back to that again and again, that those things should be cared for. The best way we can care for them is not to make them into a thing. which is why we need the no mark. When we're only using the marks, we just inevitably collapse it into a thing. But with the no marks, with all the empty space that's around whatever the mark is, the thing can just be what it is, as opposed to having to cling to it in the way that we have the habit of clinging to things. And that's where real compassion and care can come from. So that's one place, right there in the meditation. And you can do, like with the breathing, for example, very common for people to want to do a little bit deeper breath, more of an exhale. And if you investigate that a little bit in your own mind, it's because you're trying to chuck things off. You get some power from a longer exhale. So you're trying to expel the things that you don't want. So rather than doing that, if you notice yourself a little bit that way, soften the breath, just pay with it a little bit, and then bring the awareness to whatever that place of difficulty is, whether it's a tweak back or some other difficulty that you're having and experience. And that's as long as we do that, then we have to come back to this question of what's embodiment, and that will help to guide us. But as you read classical Buddhist teachings, almost all the commentator goes the other direction. And it's obvious why, because we're good at clinging to things. So it's trying to tell us to stop clinging. The only problem is that the opposite thing happens. We cling to the opposite of marks. We cling to the no marks. And then we're kind of get in trouble in a whole other way. Yeah. Generous. Practice generosity. Maybe that would be the quicker way to say it. Yeah.
Hojo-san, could you continue answering this question, but maybe put it in yet another context for us? Like, if we're in the grocery store and we're standing in the cereal aisle,
yeah,
we're looking at the 90 different kinds of cereal.
Yeah.
How would you practice with marks and no marks?
I will buy the very tasty one. It comes in a bag. I don't remember the name because my wife, she hasn't bought it for a long time. But it comes in this nice bag, and it's like a cornflake, but very thick. But it's not corn.
Heritage flake.
Yeah. See, you know what I'm talking about. It's all right there. We know it. We've proven which is the most delicious cereal. So sometimes I will say this to people, and it's a little bit like not the thing you expect for the Buddhist teacher to say to you. I will say respect your desires, or pay attention to your desires. And that's what I meant by the freedom of our delusion. That even though we are in a limited place where we are in practice of objectifying things over and over, in a way we can't get away from doing that to some extent, although we should definitely be practicing all the time to go beyond the objectification. But then we come to the situation where we will need to make a choice, and we're choosing this between this one and this one. Then our own inclination, it's not just that, well, there's nothing to do, so you should just give up and indulge your desire. It's that your desire is also part of the whole totality of the process. And that's a place where that kind of brutality where we say it shouldn't matter, so I'm not gonna exercise any choice is a problem. Now renunciates do that. So that's what it means to be a renunciate. You give up on all of that. And I think I'm not a renunciate, so I can't talk deeply about that practice. All I can talk about is how that there's a short period of time where I practice that way, but that you should abandon all of those clinging to the objects, so that then you can live in this simple way. But the simple way includes you have to make some choice. I also would say that this is a kind of interesting thing, since you brought up buying stuff, which is so much occupies our time in these weird decades of humanity. Isn't it strange how that's sort of a really, really central activity? Buying and selling. It's like, okay. But nothing else works like that. It just seems very kind of narrow. But anyway, so we are. Now I lost my train of thought. I was buying things. Yeah, buying things. Buying things. We're just there buying them. They're buying.
It was about choices.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that hurt?
Yeah. Well, so what we don't want to do is we don't want to then objectify the sky. So it's so easy for us in that place to then objectify, like for example, like consumer culture. This is kind of ridiculous, but it's also what we're doing. So if we just fall into a kind of idea like, well, we shouldn't have all of those 100 different choices, and then we create some kind of objectified notion of being anti-whatever, and then we can't even choose cereal. That's not very helpful. And then we don't have the freedom to do relative things, which are also diluted in a way, is to say like, well, what happened if I bought cereal that was made in a different way? Or what if I bought cereal that seemed like it reflected more the values that I hold about cereal, like that it shouldn't get soggy in milk. And then that all heads in a certain direction. So I'm not sure if I'm totally answering your question or not. Amusing, yes. Anyone else?
We have time for one more?
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, it's like 3%.
My mind immediately went to a thing that you mentioned a few months ago about your teacher not liking human rights and that being a mark in some way. And I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, that was I slipped that in there, didn't I? So oftentimes he had mentioned when we would talk about things on a political realm, kind of a political realm, or news, just world happenings or whatever, that he mentioned some kind of critique of a Western notion that the way that we could figure out what's the best way to do things is to see that everything has a certain right, like all humans have certain rights, inalienable rights is what we would call them, right? And so that's where how we should treat each other springs from, and part of his critique there was that it sidesteps something it has the potential to sidestep something that we really need to do, which is to actually meet each other. And my understanding of it is it could be the conduit for us actually having to meet each other, but it's not necessarily the conduit for us having to meet each other. It can also become a process of objectification, where we simply say, well, A plus B equals C, and then you have objects with rights, as opposed to living beings. I think another place where where that critique for him was coming from is the kind of idea that we could engineer equality. And that engineering of equality could then be imposed by the state. And with the state's imposition of equality, that would kind of get us somewhere. And he was like, when we would be talking about things, that's also kind of the terrain. And that he'd say, the equality is our natural state of being, and if it really is, it will be expressed through hierarchies. Would be his way of understanding it. That it won't be equality in the sense of everybody's hanging out all beings are hanging out on the same plane. That the most natural state of our aliveness and our equality would also be reflected in people or beings are in different positions. I think if I'm just sort of saying how he'd say it, then I'll give you my reflections on it. That bunnies don't eat wolves.
Go that again, I'm sorry.
Bunnies don't eat wolves, but wolves will eat bunnies. And but when we focus on this idea of what's the natural rights of a bunny, then sometimes that could get confusing. Now, people have used that argument in a lot of ways to do horrible things. They'll describe themselves as a wolf, right? It's a better place to be, and then everyone else is bunnies for them to eat. So it's not, that was not his point, but that there is the expression through hierarchies. So he didn't want to take away those very difficult power issues of being alive by talking about this just sort of idealized non-power situation. He wanted to say that we actually have to face that power situation, which will really include power. And Buddhism has something to say about that. It has something to say about if we are in the position of power, how we should conduct it. So I think also because of his kind of where he sat historically and what his life was, that he was seeing things in that way, particularly in relationship probably to communist China. That would have been a big effect on him, being in Japan and being worried about that whole situation. I'll say for me, the place where I get frustrated with human rights as being a central organizing thing. Again, I think it's basically good. I think it's basically done good things. But the place where I get frustrated is, well, maybe there's two. One is that it's always human rights. And I just think like, wow, there's all kinds of beings that aren't humans. And so how do we evolve from just talking about human rights to talking about rights that aren't only human rights, but are beyond just the human flourishing. And then the other place is that I feel like it gets used as a wedge that then can disassociate us from the living body of our collective situation. So I would say healthcare, for example, is an example of that. I believe everyone should have healthcare. If we only beat the drum as healthcare is a human right, do we actually build the system that makes it accessible to everybody, or do we just go deeper and deeper into a rigid idea about what that right is? And I see that in progressive politics. I'm just letting my politics out here. What I see on the side of progressive politics is that's become so rigid that progressive politics isn't able to achieve some of the things that we want to achieve. Or I don't know if I want to call myself a we there, but some of the things I believe in, like universal health care, I don't think we're going to get there through the rights argument, at least in the way that we're using it now. So that's my reflection. Maybe more than you asked. But yeah. Okay, we probably should finish up. Yeah.
Are there any announcements?
Have an announcement. Okay. Our temple is starting a food drive next week, so if you have any non-perishable items to share with others who may not have access to those kinds of things, we're going to help distribute them to the organizations that support food security in Lane County. So thank you. We should have some containers out, and we'll let you know more in the Friday bulletin. Thank you.
I also wanted to mention that we are getting ready to have our holiday craft fundraiser on the 21st, the Sunday the 21st and Sunday the 28th. By midweek, there'll be a table set up with a, right over by the couch in the window over there, that will have a sign on it that says you can leave donations there. We will need them. There's more information in the bulletin about that, but we have a very talented Sangha, so I would imagine we'll see some nice things. Please donate. And then there's further information about, if you're not doing something like that, the types of other things that would be appropriate. They're sort of handcrafted in nature, but you haven't necessarily made them. So in the midweek, you can begin bringing things in. Thank you.
Just a clarification, the sale's December 21st and 28th, right?
December.
Yes. And people can start bringing things now.
Yes. Well, midweek we'll have the table there.
Someone else? My name is Barbara, and there's a good chance that I will be doing a travel job next year, so if someone needs wants to sublet my little house for a couple months, it's over by the fairgrounds. Let me know.
And let's see, Tuesday, our Eco-Dharma group will be meeting in the Temple Library at 5:15. Everyone's invited to join us and think about our connection to the earth and the challenges we face and supporting each other as we face them.
From December 7th to December 14th, the temple will host its annual Rohatsu Sesshin. Sesshin is a meditation intensive retreat. There are application forms, registration forms in the front room, along with a kind of detailed description of how we hold Sesshin. Please take a look at that if you're interested in attending. And of course, you can ask me or other teachers or folks in robes if you have questions about Sesshin. Thank you.
Shuho and I were your greeters today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us. Whether you're new or just confused about something, we'll help you out.
Good morning. My name is Kosei. I'm the current head of recording and streaming on Sundays. If you're interested in learning how to transmit the Dharma online for people who aren't here or people who will listen to talks later, please come talk to me after service. Thank you.
We could use a good chunk of people helping to stuff the year-end mailer. So we'll get started in the front room in about 10 minutes or so. And if you have, you can stay for as long or as little as you like for that. It usually takes about an hour.
Our Sunday assembly normally relies on many people to take place smoothly. Like this morning I was counting, we probably have 15 people to make this happen today. So I just really want to express big gratitude for all the people that have been stepping in to take on certain roles on Sunday to make this happen. And recently I've been trained several new peoples to take on a precious position. So if you feel called to also enact generosity this way, you could let me know or the greeters know. And also if you feel like enact generosity in a financial way, we have the Dana bowls at the front room and also on Angawa, and there's also ways to set up monthly payment. Thank you.